here to speak. When Carla reached out to me and asked me to do this, because I do some speaking, some training, author some books, I can say, I'll do this, but can I bring my uncle? This is my Uncle Fran. He's 87 years old. And the reason why I thought it was so vital and important to bring him is because as a speaker and a trainer and a coach, this is not usually my speaking talk. But we recently wrote a book about his life. And I think that this book is very pertinent to this memorial service tonight. Because he experienced in his life unimaginable loss, like many of you have. And in fact, he experienced 9 different tragic losses in his life that we talk about throughout the book, that I did while I interviewed him to understand a little bit of how he got through it and what it was like and how he eventually helped others through it as well. So we titled the book, Faith Through the Fall. Faith Through the Fall. This title initiates, if you can imagine, you're driving down and it's very foggy out. You almost can't see the car in front of you. And as we talked to him, his life that was so shiny and bright at one point, the times that were so good as he built a business, all of a sudden became very foggy. And it felt like he couldn't go anywhere. And I think many of you probably know what that feels like. It's not the fog out here, but it's that internal fog. It happens in here and in here, in our hearts. And so that's what that title represented. And so there's 3 things that we look at as we talk about this faith through the fall. One is that personal struggle with the fall after going through those losses. The personal, what it was like, the fogginess, the depression, the not wanting to get up, the hard days, the sad days. And then the faith that started to come in the fall, and the faith that he had, that where he was able to reach out. And then the other thing, the third thing, was kind of a natural consequence of all that. And that was, he started reaching out to people within our community as they experienced loss. And we live in East Palestine. I'm sure a few of you have heard of that by now. And what's happened there. But in that community, when there were different people that had lost loved ones, he ended up going into their homes and talking with them because they had a shared experience that others couldn't probably relate with. And so, as I kind of tell you a little bit of this story, and then I'm going to ask him to share a couple of things, I'm going to invite you to think about your own personal connection with maybe one of the losses that I'm going to explain real quick to you, and how it might relate to you, what you might have felt in that same thing. So you personalize this to your particular situation. So I'm going to introduce a situation where he heard about somebody that had a very tragic loss in our community. And this was just a day or two after this person had a tragic loss and was in great despair. His heart was out of his chest. He couldn't feel a thing. And he's sitting in his living room. And he later told Fran, my Uncle Fran Figley, he said, "Fran, when I looked out my window and I saw you walking up the sidewalk, knowing what Fran had been through, immediately he thought, if Fran Figley can get through this, I can too." And all of a sudden I realized I saw another side of my uncle as he told that story, that before he even walked in the door, he offered a glimmer of hope. And so what was it that he experienced? And that's what we opened with. I asked in this book, what was it that he experienced that allowed somebody else to feel that way? Well, my uncle lost 4 close friends starting in his 20s. By the time he was done with his 20s, he had lost 4 friends on 4 different occasions in tragic accidents. He also lost the son of a close friend that was working on one of his job sites. He owned a company, and the son, he was mentoring the son of his close friend. So he had been mentoring him, he was an employee, and he got news that right up here, not too far from Mahoning Avenue, that he had lost his life on a job site on a Saturday. That was terrible. He also lost his firstborn son. Fran lost his firstborn son in 1998 when he found out that his son had passed. His son was born on his birthday, and so he had the same name, Fran Jr., as him. And he found out that he lost him. Then he found out a couple years later he lost his second-born son along with a daughter on a tragic motorcycle accident. As they were coming this way, the very road we came on tonight, coming up Route 14, and they were behind a semi-truck and someone pulled in front of them. And they both lost their life that day. And then he lost his third-born son. And with the losses, they were helping run the company. He also subsequently lost his business and a home. And so the losses just kept coming, like dominoes. And not only that, he's lost many of the other things that many of us have lost: parents, 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and that type of thing. So I guess I would just ask for you, with the spectrum of losses, to think which one might resonate with you the most on that. And I'm going to ask him a few questions. As I mentioned before, we called it Faith Through the Fall. And so many are experiencing their first holiday without a loved one. And when I asked you what was the hardest thing for you, it's the fact that his son Fran Jr. was born on the same day as he was, December 1st. And that became the hardest day for you. Tell us about what was hard initially when you lost your kids. What was the hardest parts and what people might be feeling? I'll take that.
I think everybody can imagine what it's like to lose a child, or maybe you have lost a child. I lost my parents and I lost my brothers and sisters, but it was nothing like losing my children. But I learned through my friends, the rest of my family, and the love of God, and the faith that I had in God, that I got through it, and I get through it to this day. The feeling isn't much different. It doesn't go away, as you'll all find out. You'll grieve this year, but you'll grieve next year. We'll always be with you, the good and the bad. I've enjoyed I got 3 pictures of my boys, and I say my prayers every night. I look at those pictures and I think of the good things, and I very seldom cry anymore. I don't have to cry because it's all joy. I know where they're at. I miss them. I know I can't do anything about it. I just hope that they're happy. That's what we have to do when we lose somebody. We can't grieve forever. We have to think about the good parts of what we had. And I had plenty of them. I had plenty of God's blessings with my children from their birth till the day they lost their lives. And I know we're all grieving over some loss of a relative, mother, father, child. It's hard to get through, but I'm sure you're here because you have the faith in God to get through it. And that's what gets us through it. And we learn to be happy about their death. We learn to be happy that we had them, and we enjoyed them, and they loved us, and we loved them. And there's so many things around my boys that it just brings me some laughter every day, as a matter of fact. And we get through it. And it's hard to get through it. It's hard to get through the loss of a mother, a father. A child is, I think, the most difficult. But through the grace of God and one another, our families, our brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers, that's how we do it through. And we learn to just turn that grief into joy of what we had when we had with it. That's the things we think about. I think about the things with my boys, all the moments and the times and the rides and all the activities that we had all life. I work with all my boys all work with me. I work with them every day. I see them every day. It was a long fight to get through it and to be able to accept their loss, but it happened. And I still see them every night, every day. Thanks for listening to my story. I really appreciate it. And God bless you for your stories.
Yeah. And so I'm going to ask you another question. As I was interviewing him, we were talking through this. And he talked to me. He had a successful business at the time, but the will to go on wasn't there. The desire to get up every morning and go out and run the business just wasn't there. He said he lost so much weight that he couldn't fit the clothes anymore. Right? Somebody came up to him. He said it was like I was sick. And they say, Francis, you were sick, right? But my Aunt Pam's here, and that's Uncle Fran's wife. Aunt Pam was strong with him through this, along with my Uncle Spare, my Aunt Marlene, who were singing for us tonight, and his brothers, and the other 9 children that he had were their support. And so, what I'm going to ask you next is, you talked about Aunt Pam, who wasn't working intentional, right to work, helped you out. How did her and the family support you and your faith? How did your relationship with God? You said that was so important when I asked how did you improve, and that's why we said it was faith through God. Just talk about how the support was for you and how your faith helped you.
Well, we have a big family, and there's 60 or 70 of us in East Palestine, and we're all very close. All my nephews and nieces and cousins, we're all very close. Love one another I just can't describe how we are. And that was so supportive that God bless anybody without that support. I made it, I had them every day. They took me for rides, they babied me like a little kid through my tragedies. And they were suffering too. The tragedy on their part. Not only I lost a son, they lost a nephew, they lost a cousin, they lost somebody that was very dear to them. And the support is what we all, it gets us all through that. I don't care if it's a neighbor, support from a neighbor, or a relative, it's the same. And I'm sure that you've all experienced that in your lives, what you went through the last year or so. Somebody's always there to pick us up when we feel like falling. And accept it. That's the big thing, accept it. When somebody turns their cheek to help you, God bless them and accept it because you need it. And then think of that with the people that's surviving somebody that's lost somebody, go see them. Go talk to them, go love them, go cry on their shoulder, because that's everything in the world. I learned that through my tragedies, and I learned to enjoy it. I knew I fulfilled something, I know I done something for somebody, and that's what it takes. Support from you, and the support that somebody gives you, be willing to accept it, because that's what gets us through. I love it, just, and God is the big thing. The love of God gets you through everything. Without God, and I know that anger comes sometimes from the lost. Some people just can't understand it. They want to blame God. I don't understand it either, but I put that out of my mind. That's His will. That's what He decided was going to happen. I accept it. Very immediate, because I have that kind of faith in God. And I think it helped me get through my losses, which was tremendous. To get through my losses was tremendous. I spent many, many nights non-sleeping in the car and driving up to my shop and sitting there brooding and trying to figure out how I was ever going to live through it. I had to set a whole bunch of things aside. It was going to be no more. The business, the money, that was all gone. That was just what I had. What I had lost was never going to come back. And I had the support of every one of these nieces and nephews. I can't even count them all. I eat breakfast almost, or have coffee with my nephews every morning. We talk about people and we laugh, and it's just a wonderful thing to have family and friends. And I'm blessed with all that. So try and help somebody else as you need help now. That's the way I look at it. And I love it.
So that's a two-way street of support. He got the support and he gave the support, like we mentioned, with the person that he saw him walking up the sideline. So that's kind of what we talked about throughout the book. So, you just heard a little bit about his journey, just a little taste of it. And so I'll ask you just 3 questions for yourself. Number 1 is, I mentioned earlier that it's the fog, right? What is the fog for you? What's it like? And it's really just you having the awareness of what that fog is like, what those triggers, those times you see the shoes, the picture, something there, it's a trigger to kind of, it puts us in that daze or in that sorrow or sadness. And then number 2, what's your way of faith through the fog? And whatever that means to you. It's personal, it's whatever it means to you, it's different for everybody. But what is your way to get through that, your journey, if you will? And then the last one is the reaching out to others part that he did, that he talked about. Being able to when he heard there was someone else like that, being able to reach out. And that's sometimes a little bit down the road, but his favorite Christmas show is Scrooge. Right? Not that he is a Scrooge, it just happens to be his favorite Christmas show. And it said, now, my Aunt Pam may differ with me on that one. But he said, Charles Dickens said, no one is useless in this world who lightens the burden of others. No one is useless in this world who lightens the burden of others. And as he told me the stories, and we wrote it down, we realized some of the ways through it were lightening the burden of others that were going through it. So I would encourage you, when that comes, as he already did, that you would do the same. And so I'm going to close now with a short poem. This is a short poem by Linda Ellis. It's called The Dash. And the dash is that space between someone's birth and the end of their life. And as we opened, everybody has memories. And all those memories are within that dash. There might be thousands, or maybe millions of memories within that dash. So I'm going to read this as a poem to close. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on tombstones from beginning to the end. He noted first, came to the date of birth, and spoke the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between the years. For that dash represents all the time they spent here on earth. And now only those who love them know what that dash is worth. For it matters not how much we owned, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we used our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to think of what is true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel. Be less quick to anger and show our thanks some more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a while. So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? Let's close.